3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Rough weekend for South Carolina football fans, but was it entirely rough? We'll touch on a lot of those things. Get some thoughts around the Southeastern Conference. There's breaking news out of Charlotte that maybe shouldn't come as a big surprise to folks. We'll tell you about that throughout the course of the afternoon.
The big surprise would be that they won a football game.
Yeah. Well, that might not happen, man.
Ever again.
Well, one day, but it might not happen in 2024/25. When's the final day of the regular season? Have we hit New Year's by then? I know they're kind of crossing over these days.
Oh, I think there'll be another week into January.
Yeah.
The first Sunday in January is usually week 18.
Okay. Time to start playing a little earlier, I think. Anyway, we'll get into all of that and more for you. Carolina falls to LSU 36-33, a game that they were up obviously 17-0 early. It was tough to watch it get away. There's no other way around it for a Carolina fan, even for a lot of folks that I've seen that were just observing this one and that were here. Guys like Josh Pate that were here. Who had some glowing things to say about the city of Columbia and his experience. Yes, for some of you, and I will talk more about this in detail through the course of the afternoon. I know some of you feel that it's all about the officiating. It's not. It's all about play calling. It's not. I would say this, though, in some capacity. Yes, 3 teams beat you on Saturday. At least contributed. But I'm not going to go so far as to say, if it weren't for the refs, because that's not how I feel. The penalties were killers. And the predominant number of penalties were things that you didn't need to do. There's still some procedural things, and I don't just mean false starts or offside. Again, I feel like in every game they've had at least one man downfield call. And I know in the opener it cost them a touchdown. This week, it cost them a big play. These things have to stop. And I was telling Elijah, you might need something, and I'm saying it this way for the sake of just kind of quickly getting the idea in everyone's head, but something like a boot camp again, especially with an off week next week. You got to fix that stuff. You can't keep doing that. Look, the personal foul on the Nussmeier call against Kennard is a picky call. I will agree with that, and I'm not alone in feeling that way. But even Coach Beamer said it in postgame. Can't put yourself in that situation. You just can't. If honestly, if Kyle hits him 6 to 8 inches lower with the same amount of force, because it wasn't some massive body blow. But you can't put your hands up around the face of a player, especially a quarterback. Quarterbacks are going to get more protection. That's just the nature of the football beast. Like it, don't like it, I get it. And yeah, picky. But don't put yourself in that situation. Just don't. You didn't need to do that. Or again, 6, 8 inches lower, couple of hands to the chest. Nobody's calling anything. And remember this too, kids. 3 officials threw a flag on that play. It wasn't one guy with one interpretation. That was 3. 3 people saw it. 3 people threw flags. Take that as you will. Again, picky, yes. But understandable from an officiating point of view, yes. Yes. But again, too many procedural type things that you can fix. Too many self-inflicted things that you can fix, and they need to fix them. But despite losing, and it's not a moral victory, I assure you. I don't play that game. But there were a lot of positives. Y'all, this team, even though some of them had to come back, this team had several explosive plays. I mean, obviously the big runs from Sanders and Sellers for touchdowns stand out, but 2 pick sixes. I know they were both negated. The big play to Delvon Campbell that Ashford threw. Sadly, that one came back too. But you did it. You can do it. And if you just clean up the dumb stuff on each of those plays, like for instance, the first one with OD, that's a horse collar tackle. You can't do that. And everybody knows it. Now, a player in the moment forgets, and that's unfortunate. But it's described to all involved. Can't do that. But you still showed everybody that was watching, and that's a lot of people. Man, you got some dudes. You can make some plays. We better be careful when we throw. You know, Akron's one thing, but Jackson Dart and Ole Miss, they're going to see that you just returned 2 that should have counted as touchdowns. And you've already had a pick 6 this season. So that's good. Rocket Sanders got going. Lenoris having to come out. Unfortunate. Ashford was serviceable. I think you clearly saw, with all due respect, I think you clearly saw why Lenoris beat Robbie Ashford out. But you also heard, and Elijah, you were in the room, and you'll talk more about it. We know why Shane and Dowell decided that Lenoris couldn't go. We saw the one series where he came back in, and he was a statue. And I know what an 18, 19-year-old feels, the bravado. I'm invincible. Sometimes the grown-ups in the room have to make a tough decision. Robbie was good. He was good. That's what I'll say. He was good. Now, I think too many times he, like Lenoris against Old Dominion, maybe gave up on the play too quickly because he ran a lot. There were a lot more pass plays called for him where he decided to tuck and run. The D was strong, but they were gassed. LSU's third quarter was a clinic. And you must, Gamecock fans, you must give a lot of the credit to LSU. At halftime, they adjusted. They got the ball first. They made the plays. Nussmeier stayed in the pocket when he was getting harassed. He made some big-time throws. And that dude's got a next-level arm and a next-level head. And, of course, his dad is an NFL position coach. So there's a lot of that in him, too. But the kid, I thought the kid stood pretty tall. Made a couple of mistakes, and he got lucky. But Carolina was just gassed. And what was it, 25 snaps to 6?
Yep. 25 of the 31 plays run in the third quarter were run by LSU.
A lot of you complained about the play calling from a Carolina offensive perspective. It's always an easy place to look. I don't think that it was as problematic as some feel. I think you still got to execute. Again, if some of the things go your way and you don't get penalized for it. And again, LSU's good, y'all. I know there's this belief, they're not as good as they usually are. They're not as good as they could be. I agree. And maybe Carolina's better than you think. Maybe this was about right. After 1 hour of football, maybe this is just a South Carolina football team that is 3 points worse than LSU when all is said and done. Maybe they're not. It was a good football game. Feel bad for Herrera, too, man. Thought that thing was going, thought it was going. And then when I think it hit about the 10-yard line, it just decided to start to turn. And what'd he miss it by? A foot? Plenty of leg. He could have made that thing from 6 or 7 yards further back. So that's a good sign, at least, maybe, depending on how you want to, whether you want silver lining or lead lining. But you must pick yourselves back up. I had several of you hit me over the weekend and say, I don't know if they'll recover from this. They will. Here's the good news. You've got, honestly, one of the 5 worst teams in America coming into your building. You better win. You don't have to win running away. I think it's a 27-point spread as we speak. You better win the football game. Then you have a week off, and you'll digest this. It's sports, and sometimes you lose, and sometimes you lose bad. If you had lost 36-13, maybe you don't gain any respect at all. And people say, well, that was a one-time thing. You go up, you realize what Kentucky did to Georgia, and you're like, hey, we played really well last week. And we went toe-to-toe with a team that still believes it can win the national title. And I don't know where LSU season is going to end. That was their first conference game. And as we said going into it, Elijah, all of LSU's goals were in front of them. Carolina fans, don't get too down on this. Be upset. Shane and Brian Kelly both, by the way, think the officiating sucked, and they've both sent things into the league to get some clarification on why some of the things were called the way they were. It was a poorly officiated game for everybody. But there were a lot of positives to take. Again, not moral victories. Know where you can clean up your mistakes. You still got 9 games to play against some pretty good football teams. You can win a few of them. You can steal a couple. So, again, I get the angst and disappointment because that one was tough, man. That one was tough.
Yeah, certainly. And that's one you're going to want to have back. What you don't want to do, though, is have that turn into what the Florida game was last year, where you had a game that was won, it fell out of your grasp, and then it changed the trajectory of your season. You look back on that as being the turning point of where everything went wrong. There's a lot to get to. I feel certainly like, in terms of the officiating, I think the one where you really got hosed the most, where there was nothing that you could do about it, was the pass interference on Mazio Bennett that took away the Delvin Campbell play. Because Mazio was running a route. I don't know if you can... that was the one that I was just the most puzzled by. But in the other ones, too, there were controllable elements, right? Whether you agree with the call or not, there was a controllable element. If Kyle Kennard just puts one hand on Nussmeier, runs in front of him, they're not calling anything. They're going to... you just... In that position, even as hard as it is, even though your whole football life and training might tell you differently... Don't lay out the quarterback or put a hand even close to the head and neck area.
Head and neck.
Anything close can be called. That's a controllable thing.
Yes.
Whether you agree with the call or not, what is a fact is that is controllable. Garrett Nussmeier is not Ray Lewis. He's not making that chase down tackle. I'm sorry. Have you seen Garrett Nussmeier run? It's not impressive.
Right.
And the horse collar, yeah, by the letter of the rule, that's a horse collar, man. And it sucks that it took an interception and touchdown off the board. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Those are terrible breaks that happen. And at the end of the day, though, you still had a 17-point lead in the first half at a game in which the home crowd was rocking. It's as loud as I've heard that play since I've been here. It was an awesome atmosphere. It was everything you could have possibly wanted in a college football game. Even given the bad plays, the calls that you might not agree with, you're still in a position to win the game, and you still didn't do it anyway. And that's unfortunate. There's some things you can learn from that as well. Really, I think the third quarter had the biggest impact on the game more than anything, because you had a one-possession lead in the second half going in the third quarter, and basically LSU choked you out for an entire period, and that was the period they used to get themselves back in contention and at least show your defense having some vulnerability. Because in that first half, that matchup we talked about, LSU's offensive line and South Carolina's defensive line, wasn't even close. Gilbert Edmond even got in on the party, right? And we talk a lot about Kennard and Stewart, and those guys are freaks, but Gilbert Edmond that first half said, "Don't forget about me," and he was in Garrett Nussmeier's grill that entire first half. And LSU made some adjustments to make it to the point where that matchup in the second half became a push. Ultimately, because South Carolina's defense was on the field for so many plays. Tackling on the perimeter got a little more poor. Tackling in the run game got more poor. And part of that is the fatigue that happens when you're just out there for a lot. But what I think this tells you, and we'll get into a lot of this for the rest of the show, but I think if there's anything you can take away positively, which there's a lot you can take away positively, the offense played its best game. The offensive line played its best game. Defensively, you proved that you can go against the two best tackles in football and make them have to hold you to keep you away from their quarterback. I know Emory Jones didn't give up any sacks on paper, but there were the most egregious stuff. Also, some of the stuff was missed on the tackles, right?
Right.
Like Emory Jones got away with some pretty interesting no calls on holding from several instances. That's what it takes to keep you away from other teams' quarterbacks. Kentucky did it, and Kentucky got called for it. Sometimes it didn't get called as much in this game. But if you can put that type of pressure on LSU's offensive line and their tackles, you're going to do that against anybody. I think that's a really good positive takeaway.
Let's hear from you guys. 803-404-6100 on the phone lines. The Firehouse Subs text line. Your reactions, more sound from players and coaches, too. It's the Monday Postgame Show. Now the football season's here. You got to find the best way to watch the big game, especially when you're not inside your favorite team's stadium. The best way is with an amazing home theater system to catch all the action. No one is better than my good friends at Integrated Media. I'm so choked up about it, I can't even do it right. With just one call, Integrated Media installs the latest from Samsung, Sony, Dolby surround systems. It's like you're part of the action. If you want to do it outside, especially now that the weather is changing for the better, then let Integrated install an outdoor home theater built around a Samsung Terrace TV, enhanced with Sonos outdoor speakers. They look and sound like anything inside does, and they're made to be out there all year long. Check out some examples on Facebook and Instagram. Just punch them up, then set up an appointment at 803-948-8327. One room, whole house, outdoors, Wi-Fi that works everywhere, and so much more. Feel like you are there with my good friends at Integrated Media. Twenty minutes after 3 o'clock on this Monday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you on a Reaction Monday post-game show. Carolina falls to LSU 36-33. Gamecocks 2-1, 1-1 in conference play. Akron coming in this weekend. Gamecocks heavy favorites over the Zips. Then it's an off week before Mississippi comes to town. Ole Miss rolling all over Wake Forest up in Winston-Salem the other night. I'm not going to dwell on this topic, but I will tell you, since I mentioned there was some breaking news coming out of Charlotte, Dave Canales, the new head coach of the Panthers, has said today that Andy Dalton, at least for now, will become the team's new starting quarterback. They're going to bench Bryce Young after the Panthers' 0-2 start because, well, you know, it's got to be Bryce Young's fault. They're terrible. I mean, they are terrible. And Dave Tepper doesn't know what he's doing, man. But anyway, Andy Dalton, who turns 37 next month, will be the Panther starting quarterback this weekend. Let's get on the phone lines and hear from you guys as we continue to react to Carolina LSU. And Charles is going to start us off today. Hey, Charles, welcome in.
Hey, guys, how you guys doing today?
Okay, buddy, hope you are.
I'm good. A little disappointed, but you know what? I saw a really good game today. This weekend. I saw a great team this weekend because honestly, a lot of us didn't think that we would play that good, and we did. There are certain things that happened during the game that could be fixed, and unfortunately, we got flagged for it, and we got some points taken off the board because of it. But I am really excited about this season. I really am. Barring injury, Carolina is not a team that other teams can look past anymore. And I really, hope that everybody else saw what I saw and just say, you know what, we got a good season coming up and just be prepared for it.
Well, I think, Charles, good phone call. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Like I said, yeah, there are, I know it's hard. That's one reason that I wanted to go back and forth with some of you, and I did a little bit in post game. But yesterday, I just said, I want to hear what Shane says in the not just the post game, but in his Sunday teleconference, and just have a chance to watch a little bit more, listen to Andy Staples, listen to Josh Pate, and those guys, and get some more national Ari Wasserman, get some of that national reaction, and just see what kind of all came together. And there are, like I say, I know Carolina fans don't want to hear it, and I know this is not a like-for-like analogy, but y'all remember the Auburn game? I think was it the Thursday night game? I don't know, 15-ish years ago when Auburn had the ball the entire third quarter. Y'all remember that? They got the ball, they scored, they got the ball at the half, they scored, they went for an onside kick, they made it work. And it's just one of those where you just, you could see where it got away from you. And I know some of the officiating things a couple of days ago are still going to stick in people's craw for a while. I get it. I do. But LSU had a plan that they executed better in the third quarter in that difference-making time. But then you hit a couple of explosives and you made some differences. That Sanders touchdown, man.
That was awesome. The blocking on that play was so perfectly executed. When was the last time you seen an offensive line unit for South Carolina block like that?
It's been a while.
You know how many yards they picked up per pop on non-sack plays? So sack adjusted. Uh-huh. You picked up almost 8 yards per rush against LSU.
You got better. You got better this weekend against a good team.
There's a lot to be excited about. If you're choosing to be an optimist, it's going to be pretty easy to be an optimist in terms of what's sustainable down the road. Offensively, you watch the last 3 games, and you'd be lying to yourself if you're telling yourself that they haven't gotten better those 3 games. They've definitely gotten better. Still room for plenty of improvement, don't get me wrong, but the numbers and the plays that you watch aren't lying to you. The offense is improving. The difference, and again, to Charles's point and what we're saying here too, this is, again, a two-sided coin. You better fix what's fixable. Mm-hmm. And again, whether that is awareness on the play of what you should and shouldn't be doing, or just the little things that you clean up, like the procedural stuff. That's why I said, if you missed my opening, I said some form of like boot camp, training camp kind of a thing, especially next week. And that's typically what you can do in an off week is work on you. And there are some things, and listen, with all due respect, you can work on you a little bit this week too. Again, I don't really care if you don't cover the spread against Akron. I'm not here for the spreads, but the spread's 27 points.
probably make you feel a little better about yourself if you covered the spread, and they're bad.
Yeah, they're horrific.
They're bad.
They squeaked one out against Colgate on Saturday, and not the toothbrush.
You're right. I think
Toothpaste.
I think the Athletics' new full FBS ranking had Akron. Like I said, I think there were maybe only 4 or 5 schools rated lower.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Than Akron. So they're like in the 120s. Carolina, for what it's worth, was like number 45.
Something like that. But, I mean, think of it this way, too, in terms of just the penalties. You committed 13, right? Yeah. It's not just 1 or 2 that really did you in.
Right.
You commit 9 or 10 penalties. You can put yourself in a position to win that game. It wasn't like 1 or 2 bad flags on you. It wasn't like those are your only penalties in the game. You committed 13 for an entire game for almost 150 penalty yards. That adds up, and that adds up to the point where, yeah, maybe, penalty number 13 could be the one that keeps you from winning a football game. If you limit it, by like 3 or 4 penalties, especially like the procedural stuff, like the 2-point conversion, right?
Yeah.
Where Robbie Ashford, God bless him, I don't think he knew where he was throwing the ball when he released it.
No.
But it found the hands of a Gamecock in the end zone, which would have been 2 points. But on a play like that, the offensive line just has to know. You have too many of those plays because you do run a lot of RPO, and that's the one thing about RPO is that when you run those type of plays, they're designed for you to run and passing being the second option.
Yeah.
It is a run-pass option, not a pass-run option. So your offensive line is geared to be in run block, and sometimes if the play takes too long to develop, you're going to get that type of penalty. A lot of that's timing. If you clean that up with the personnel you have on offense, you're going to have a lot more success with your offense. You're going to see a lot of the little things that we're talking about now be corrected to be able to ultimately add up to be big things.
Right. Charles, thanks again for the phone call, buddy. Jonathan up next on the Postgame Show. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, man.
What's up?
So that last drive that LSU was going down the field, and I forgot his name, but I think it was number 7 intercepting that ball and ran it, like 100 yards.
Yeah.
And then they hit that quarterback. Didn't he become a player? So technically, we can still hit him. Or
yes, you can. You can. They were again. Kyle Kennard was flagged for basically hands to the face, is what and 3 different officials threw that flag
as an unnecessary roughness. Is what it was.
Yeah. You just again, as I mentioned earlier, he could you can certainly block him, and if Kyle has the same hand, even the same force he uses with his hands, and is 6 inches lower on the chest,
they're probably not calling it.
I don't think they call that.
And they would call that if it was a wide receiver on the other side of the field. Like the penalty is doing it away from the play.
And look, it's hard to ever say, well, hey, if you just have that one play back. But in that specific moment, if you do get that pick 6 and you're up the way you are relative now to what LSU, because again, you kept the ball there, you just didn't get the score.
Mm-hmm.
But you alter what LSU must do at that point, and you may at that point also play back into your strength on defense, and you didn't allow yourself to do that. Instead, you allowed LSU to continue to kind of line up and beat you up a little bit, and that's just such a killer. Mm-hmm. And so again, I'm not going to say, because you can't just go look at it and say, well, let's just take one play back from somewhere if it's a score, and then everything else be equal. LSU would have to, equal and opposite reaction type stuff, but you had a chance there to do something very different.
And at the end of the day, you still got the ball back with a chance. If you put together a couple first downs, you win that game. Still.
Yeah.
But what did you do after that? You go 3 and out.
Yeah.
You can't go 3 and out. Like, I know we're up against a break right now, but I charted, every single drive of that second half and what happened. And one 66-yard touchdown run made a big difference on how the final numbers looked. Mm-hmm. But these drives you had in the second half will keep you from winning games.
803-404-6100. More calls coming up. Minuteman Press, one of the great new folks here doing a lot of good things with us at 107.5 The Game and all of our Cumulus stations. They're in the old Apex Graphics building. It's really just like a block away from where I am sitting right now. But whereas Apex only offered printing, now Minuteman Press is doing everything that your business will need to market what you do to anybody you want to market it to. Advertising needs like graphic design, promotional products, embroidery, screen printing, laser engraving, signs, banners, business cards, greeting cards. In fact, over 300,000 items that can help you grow your business. Minuteman is a franchise with over 900 locations, and yet they're locally owned here in Columbia by Ken and Anna Holloway, graduates of USC. They really want to help you out. Small, medium, large businesses, they're looking for you right now. Soon, a showroom to tell you more about what they can do. You can call them up anytime you want to, or better yet, go online right now to Minuteman.com. We're talking Gamecock football after a very difficult 36-33 loss to the LSU Tigers at Williams-Brice on Saturday. Packed house, terrific environment. As somebody who's been to a few of those, the crowd over there at game day, just off the charts, man.
Oh, they brought it.
Just off the charts.
They brought it.
I mean, and I heard from some who were out there and how long especially some of the students were out there. Like, good for you, man. But you looked and sounded fantastic. The stadium was electric, even for a noon kick. And I know it was all right there. I know it's what makes it tough, But again, if you can clean up some of your messes, you also showed people you have a chance to do some big things. And I think Carolina, even in a loss, I don't want to say started to scare people. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that there is a measure of respect that was earned. That maybe some were like, yeah, I don't know. Because, a lot of what you do, especially in summer prognostication, is based on what you've last shown people. What have you done for me lately in life, right? That's a thing. And even if you lost the game, and like I said, you look at what Kentucky did to Georgia and what you did to Kentucky. I'm not trying to apply the transitive property here. You beat Kentucky. And maybe Kentucky got out of their funk a little bit, too, and had a defensive front that was supposed to do that all season long. Right?
Right.
So
didn't that Saturday.
We'll see. We'll see how this turns out. Again, I will not say that you will win this weekend. You certainly should win this weekend.
You have a really good chance. If you want to put it as nicely as possible. It's about as nicely as I can think about it.
And I would urge you to do that if I were talking to the Gamecock football team. And then you have a week off, and then Mississippi comes in. And we don't know yet what time the Mississippi game is.
It's a night game, I think, right?
Well, do we? Yeah, say is it in the window?
It's in the night window,
right? That's what I believe. Just not. We don't know because that could be a big deal.
It could be.
That could be
because I feel Ole Miss is going to be undefeated going into that game.
Let's get to Barry up next on the phone lines. Hey, Barry, how are you, bud?
All right, how you guys doing?
Doing all right, man.
All right. You know what, Jay? I want to commend you, okay, because I've been listening to you for quite a while now. And you don't make excuses, okay? And I've heard like 6 hours of the refereeing and the calls and this and that. And you come out and you speak honestly. And the two calls on the touchdowns that were called back were both penalties, obviously. There's no arguing that, picky or not. It's just like the third strike. You can't, with two strikes, you got to expand the strike zone, So, but, I got to look with I'm not a Carolina fan. I'm just a football fan of college, okay, college football. The positives, okay, the positives that you take away from this. Ray Tanner used to say they wanted to compete. Well, anytime you play a game, you're competing, okay? But now it looks like this team is on the verge of contending. There's a huge difference between competing, that just means playing the game, and contending. I see a team now that if they didn't lose Sellers in the first half, most likely would have went on to win that game. So that is a huge loss. Forget about the penalties. You lose your starting quarterback, who in the years I've followed this team is the best freshman quarterback I've ever seen there, okay, potential-wise. So the things like you say that you got to clean up, look at the third down conversions. Game 1, game 2, game 3 needs to be cleaned up tremendously. And I know you have to agree with that. Yeah. You say this needs to be cleaned up. And as far as the rushing, I know they had, I don't know how many yards they had rushing, but I didn't do the math. But if you take the 77-yarder and the 66-yarder, and then you take the rest of the carries and divide them, you see what your average per carry is. Mm-hmm. So, those two large runs make your overall running total look fantastic. But what did you do in the other 22 carries? You follow what I'm saying?
I do. I do. And those are some of the good positives, Barry. And I'm not pushing back on you per se, but what I would say about those two is, now you've shown people, hey, got to account for that. You've got your explosives. And you're going to have to make some explosives at times. You need that home run threat. And you have two. You might have more. I know they wanted to get Harbor going again. We finally saw Campbell. Again, unfortunately, the play didn't count. But Campbell's going to have to be a guy that you're going to be able to throw downfield to and just go get it. And he went and got it. Mm-hmm. Again, hate that one had to come back. So, Barry, thanks for the call. And I know what Barry's all about there, but they ran okay.
Oh, well, one point I'd like to address about that point about the running. Take away the explosive runs, and what is your running game? Your run game is designed to get you first downs, get you ahead of the sticks. What was the average? The stat we threw out all last week after Kentucky, your average third down was 3rd and 12 because you weren't getting any push. Mm-hmm. It was better this week. It was 3rd and 8. So you improved on 1st and 2nd down, which is primarily South Carolina's running downs. On 3rd downs of 4 or less, they were perfect 2 of 2 on those. So when you had a chance to convert on 3rd downs in short situations, you could lean on the threat of a really good running game. So, yeah, I mean, you still ran the ball really effectively. And even in a second half in which, you didn't get anything going offensively, you were still at least able to conjure up an explosive play. Now, granted, there's so much more that you're going to have to be able to do if Lenora Sellers goes out of the game to be able to at least threaten a passing attack with Robbie Ashford in the game. But your running attack throughout the entire game and the run blocking that you saw, specifically from Torricelli Simpkins, I mean, if we're giving out game balls, even in a losing effort, that guy played his tail off in that game and created some holes for Rocket Sanders in that first half on that first drive, which is about as methodical a drive as you'll see from this team all season long. That guy brought it. Yeah. And that offensive line, for the most part, brought it. And this was the best, for a unit that we have heavily scrutinized all season long, rightfully so, given what happened last year, they brought it. I think that's a pretty good takeaway you can make, in terms of positivity for this team.
Barry, thanks for the phone call, buddy. Thad up next on the Postgame Show. Hey, Thad.
Hey, guys. Jay, Tyler, I appreciate all you guys do. I have heard from the Postgame Show many that criticize the coaches, the play calling, the different things. Heard from many that have said something about the refs, and then that no game comes down to one call. Went back and watched the game, took pictures of every play that was just it was game changing. The fourth quarter was taken over by the refs. They interjected themselves into many calls. I'm not going to get into it. It's just too much to really get into. But here's the one thing that I'd like to point out. If you remember when Jadeveon Clowney and the South Carolina Gamecocks were playing against Michigan, there used to be a meme or a GIF, whatever you want to call it, that showed how much does it take to make Jadeveon Clowney mad.
Right.
And it showed the chains and how far away the stick was from the actual ball itself and how they still gave him a first down.
Right.
Next play, he blows up the running back from Michigan. That's exactly what I hope the Gamecocks take this game and blow this season up. End up with a 9-3 to a 10-2 record, playing in the playoffs because of this game.
Well, there's certainly, Thad, a lot to be disappointed in and try and use that as fuel. And that's why I said, I wasn't going to go back and forth with a few people on Saturday because I know the sting of it in the moment. Like, man, this could derail the whole season. I get it. I do not believe that will happen. For one thing, there's too much of this season left. B, you've got fortuitous timing. Again, you've got a bad team coming into your building this weekend. There's just no other way to put it. So you need to go win that game the way you're supposed to. Then you have a week off to work on yourself. And that's why I said if Shane wants to have some kind of boot camp thing, whatever. Listen, if he wants to go full on Michael Jordan and Kirby Smart, okay. Do it.
Take it personally.
Yeah. I mean, if you need to make stuff up or they hate you or whatever, that's cool.
Brian Kelly did say after the game, nobody was picking us to win. Like, dog, stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah,
stop.
That's why you're a favorite, sir. More of the Postgame Show is coming up. Welcome back into the Postgame Show on this Monday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. John hits us on Twitter as we continue reacting to Carolina LSU. Looking back, that decision to go again on the two-point conversion could have been pivotal had the rest of the game played out the same way it did, because Herrera would have been kicking for the win instead of the tie. Yeah, theoretically, I think that's true. And I did wonder if Shane, I think that the difference there, I'll be honest with y'all, and this is a football thing, not a specific second half thing the other day. I just wouldn't go for two until like really late in the game, because so many things do still happen to where a point could matter. And so, John, you may be onto something. Now, again, what does it alter?
Because he still missed the kick, so it still wouldn't.
Yeah.
If we want to play that game.
Right. But I'm just typically, a guy like, man, I wouldn't go for two until there's 5 minutes to go in a game.
No, I fully support going for two at any point, especially when you're picking up 8 yards a pop. Yeah. I think your offensive line showed that you could probably get some push. Maybe I don't love the play call.
Right.
Maybe I probably would have trusted them to go mano-a-mano in the trenches and pick up a couple of yards on the ground on a sweep or a run, an option read with that right there, because Robbie's also a really good runner with the football. I would just try to do what he is best at. Now, it was, I think, an RPO, and that might be why there was an illegal man downfield, which is what negated the miraculous conversion on it. But, I mean, at that point in the game, too, especially if it's even in the fourth quarter, right? If your defense is tired and you're getting choked out like they were in the fourth quarter on defense, because you've just been out there for so long, you don't know when you will get the ball back or if you get the ball back. Assuming you get the ball back is one thing I don't think you can necessarily plan for. It's kind of like in Bears-Texans, was Bears-Texans? I forgot which game it was. No, it was Kentucky-Georgia. Kentucky punts on fourth down near midfield. And, they got the ball back. And this was with 3 minutes left, and they had 2 timeouts maybe?
I think they had 2 timeouts.
Yeah. So, they got the ball back.
It was 4th and 8.
Yeah. But even then, you got the ball back with, 3 seconds?
Something like that.
I mean, never assume you're just going to get the ball back at any point in the game.
Right.
If you have a chance to do something to cut into a lead or do whatever it can, then you take it right there.
Yeah, and that's why I say I'm not being critical of Shane calling that one or anything else. And John even wasn't. I guess John's point was once they backed you up 5 yards, why not just kick at that point so you could get a guarantee or at least a more guaranteed feel of a point. And I get it, but
sure.
And I'm trying to. What was the score there?
Fair
I'm trying
rebuttal.
to remember what the score was at that exact time, and I don't have that in front of me.
That was after the Rocket Sanders touchdown.
Yeah, the big run.
Yeah, that made it. That gave you a 30-29 lead.
Yeah.
And if you go for two right there, then you make them have to make a field goal, because then theoretically, say you don't get the ball back,
right.
LSU takes a little longer to score the touchdown, say they have to kick a field goal, you'd rather them kick for the tie than kick for the lead, especially if, again, they're choking you out like they were in the fourth quarter and sitting on the football. Then you would like to have, at least a little bit of time. But, yeah, I think that's why the decision was made. I think it's still the right one, even if it wasn't converted.
Just about a minute or so left in this hour. Plenty more to do next hour, obviously, including some looks at what's going on around college football and the NFL. But once again, there is breaking news out of Charlotte today for the few remaining Panther fans that are still there.
There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Andy Dalton will be the starter this weekend.
That's going to fix a lot. That's really cool. Really cool. Happy.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, again, and unfortunately, it just means, it's all Bryce Young's fault. And I know that's probably not what Dave Canales is trying to say, and we'll maybe hear from him later on. Look, is Andy Dalton the answer to everything that ails that team? No.
Has he ever been the answer to everything that's ever ailed a franchise?
I mean, he was good for a few years in Cincinnati, right?
He was good. Yeah. He was a top half quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he was ever a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
But there's so much wrong.
What percentage chance would you give it that the directive came from upstairs to bench Bryce Young as opposed to this being Dave Canales' idea? I'm thinking like 80-20.
I don't know, man.
Canales is a quarterback guy, man. He loves working with quarterbacks. He loves working with quarterbacks on their second chances. Baker Mayfield in Tampa, Geno Smith in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's not like him to give up on somebody 2 weeks in. You know what it's very much like for David Tepper? To give up on somebody a year and 2 weeks
That's
in.
fair.
I do not buy that this is Dave Canales' idea. Not for a second.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I hadn't thought too much about it really other than they go, let's see, what do they have next? They go to Vegas, host the Bengals, and then they go to the Bears. Panthers are the Bears' favorite team, man.
They are. The Bears might give them a thank you card when they show up.
I don't think they're going to win any of those three.
No.
Oh, it's going to be a long year. Hour 2 coming up.
Ugly.
Since 1959, Palmetto Propane has been a family-owned business delivering propane to homes and businesses across South Carolina. They are the leading full-service propane company. They have exceptional propane service, delivery, professional installation on a full range of products like gas logs for the inside. You know, holiday time's coming up. Family will be around. Maybe you're tired of the wood pile out back. You still want to have a nice fire. They have grills, Rinnai tankless water heaters, gas lanterns, generators, fire features for the outdoors, and so much more. Get in soon to a Hearth and Patio home store showroom and see for yourself what a lot of these things look and feel like. They've got them in Aiken, West Columbia, Batesburg, Lexington, and right across the river in Augusta. Again, since 1959, known for their expertise and experience of their trusted service technicians. Find the store nearest you. Learn a whole lot more when you log on to palmettopropane.com.
I don't think so. I mean, we were in some tough situations, field position-wise, backed up on our 1 foot line after we stopped them on the 4th down play down there. What a stop by our defense. Holy smokes. We needed to be smart there, getting the ball out of the end zone. We were running the ball well. Rocket was really running that thing also. And, no, I didn't think so. I mean, we trust Robbie to throw the football. We weren't trying to play the second half not to lose. I mean, we wanted to stay on the attack, and we were just field position was. We were in some tough situations there in the 3rd quarter especially.
Shane Beamer answering a question about whether or not the Gamecocks went more conservative from a play-calling aspect in the second half of Saturday's 36-33 defeat to LSU. Welcome back in. Hour 2 of the Postgame Show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being on board with us. That was a heck of a stop by the defense there. And as has been pointed out, too, I think they called 10 pass plays for Robbie, or at least either a pass play or an RPO, and on 6 of them, he decided to run the football, whether he was flushed out or chose the run option there. So, you saw maybe not just a really big drop-off from Lenoris to Robbie, but we've seen in the last couple of games Lenoris getting much more comfortable throwing the football. And, maybe Robbie just wasn't quite there yet in terms of what was called. Or again, as Shane said, certain situations. And both these guys, just really, Lenoris and Robbie, really trust themselves to be good runners. And they are. Listen, I think, again, what was indicative a lot of so many things on plays that were called back. That's what is unfortunate. You saw some athleticism, like Robbie scrambling around to make a play on the 2-pointer. Or hitting Dale Von Campbell the way he did. Both of those come back. And we already know about the pick sixes that came back, but there were some other big plays, or at least athletic plays, things that you guys have seen and wanted to see from some of these players. And then you find a way to have it negated. And those are the things that must get cleaned up. We've talked a lot about it in the last hour. For those of you just tuning in, listen, especially the second pick six, the 100-yarder. And that's the thing, too, man, 100-yard pick six negated for 2 things. Okay, yes, you can make a case that it's a nitpicky penalty call, but 3 of the officials threw their flags. It's not one guy. 3 guys threw flags. That needs to tell you something. And secondly, it's okay that Kyle hits him or blocks him or pushes him or whatever word you want to use to describe it. You just can't do it in the head and neck area, especially to a quarterback. They're going to get you for that. And they did. They did. So we've talked about some of those things. And I realized there was, 22 total penalty calls for over 200 total yards of penalties. The national guys that are looking at this game and don't have a dog in the hunt have all talked about how poorly officiated it was. Now, I've seen some people say, I wish the media would hold officials more accountable. Trust me, at least this member of the media has for years attempted to. I don't want to rake them over the coals. Listen, the only people in our lives that have more questions asked of them than like football coaches or just sports coaches in general are really like elected leaders. And sometimes I don't even know if our elected leaders are in front of microphones and cameras as much as coaches are. Like Brian Snickers does a press conference every single day. God bless him.
162 games.
And all those big league managers do, man. Just God bless them. That's, ugh. And I'm the guy who's asking questions, right? But to come back around, in all seriousness, I have asked questions of those at the conference level, at the athletics director level. I would love more, only when there is massive controversy, it seems, do we even get, say, a pool reporter to be able to go in and speak with an official. And then that pool reporter disseminates the information to the assembled media, and on we go. So I'd love for that. But the conferences tell us, or the leagues, if it's pro, tell us we can't have these things made public because it begins to undermine our ability to find the very best people we can. We handle all of these things privately. When there is a need for reprimand or worse, we handle it privately. I think back to a Florida game a few years ago, just a couple of horrible calls. One guy got clothesline. Remember that? There was nothing. It's like, wait a minute. How are you telling us that you didn't call anything on that? And how are you telling when all of you are watching the play, how'd you miss it? Because you didn't miss it. Everybody saw it. And you've even got a replay official who, again, unfortunately, that's why I've said before too, Elijah, and I know I'm kind of going down a different tangent here on a different tangent real quick, but that's why I've talked about like Sky Judge. Like, guys, y'all missed one. I got it right here on my DV Sport screen. All right. And then one of them throws their flag. Just little things like that. But there does, I think, at times need to be some level, if you want to call it accountability, it may not go all the way up to that, but at least explanation, because we're not privy to that. Now, tomorrow, the schools that submitted questions, and I might air quote that a little bit too, complaints, concerns. It's like the little box at the restaurant. You fill out the card, drop it in. Tomorrow, the schools, and I'll just use the SEC, they'll hear back tomorrow, typically. Today is the day for review. Why? A coach submits things on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Birmingham gets it. And they start rolling on all that Sunday and Monday. And on Tuesday, typically, you'll get here's what the report, because the officials do fill out a report at the end of the game as to why they did and didn't call things. Some are very easy to see. Some, again, have more questions. For instance, Brian Kelly believes that the punt block
is an illegal play.
And he wants to know why it was allowed to stand.
Yeah, and here's the thing: these dudes are getting held accountable. That's kind of the thing. They get reviewed a lot. Yeah. It's not like the SEC's like, ha, whoopsies. They review it, and if they get it wrong, they don't get higher profile matchups. They're stayed away from more important games. This is how they divvy this out. That's about as enough accountability as you can get to referees. Here's the thing. They're going to miss them. And even if we had, Sky refs or whatever it is, I guarantee you, we're going to implement a robot strike zone in Major League Baseball, and somebody is going to get tossed by a robo ump because they still want to complain about it. People will always complain about officiating, whether it's good, bad, indifferent.
It is out of here.
You are ejected, sir. No, but that's the thing too, man. That's why I can't get worked up over a ton of officiating, even if it involves a team that I'm cheering for, because it's baked into every result.
It is.
It's baked into every single result. And sure, I don't know about the play that Brian Kelly's alluding to. I mean, if that is an illegal play, then congratulations. You got away with an illegal play that blocked a kick and set you up for a touchdown to put you up 17-0. 17-0 is where you should have helped sit on it a little bit and maybe not give up that lead. There's so many things in a football game that you can control that to just boil down a football game to the simplicity of officiating, I've never fully bought into, right? There's so much that you can control in these games. And look, we will pick out every game we've played 3, there's 9 more.
Yep.
And we will have similar conversations all 9 games because officiating is bad by nature. Yeah. And at one point, it's just baked into every result. It's a fact of life.
Josh Pate on his show did say he thought it was, and I don't know what other games, it's just the worst officiating I've seen.
Every
around
game's
the
the worst officiating they've ever seen.
So there is accountability. And like I say, look, Elijah and I have said already, and you just heard some of it more too. We get it. Like I say, there are some things. Sometimes they throw flags. Sometimes they don't. And you're left scratching your head as to why. Again, the schools will find out what the conference says about it, usually. But then they're not allowed to come tell us or you. And I say us because, again, we're the conduit.
Sometimes they will, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, and sometimes they may say, yeah, they explained it to us and we get it, or they explained it to us.
And that's the end. Yeah, they will not elaborate on their disagreement.
And then there are guys like me who still look at infield fly call from 12 years ago and say, sure, the rule book says that's the right call. The application of the rule was horrible. And there's those kind of things too. But listen, don't put what I've said about Saturday more than anything else is something Shane Beamer said in postgame. In a couple of the situations that went against South Carolina, don't put yourself in that position to begin with. And there were avoidable things there. Again, Kyle can hit Nussmeier 6 inches lower, hit him in the chest, hit him between the numbers. And not one of those flags is going to be thrown instead of 3 of them being thrown. But what Kyle did in the first half on the horse collar, that was a horse collar tackle, and you can't do that.
Here's the thing, too. Like, as a lifelong New Orleans Saints fan who is forever scarred by the no pass interference call in the NFC Championship game, at the end of the day, you know what I can still tell myself? They got the ball first in overtime.
Yeah.
And could have ended it right there.
You know what I've said about that, too, is about 5 minutes before that play, Jared Goff had his head, like, turned around like the Exorcist.
Yeah.
And there was nothing was called.
And in the South Carolina game, too, like, yeah, it sucks to get that called back, but you still get the pick. So you still have an opportunity to maybe milk some clock, get the ball close, maybe put some more points on the board and make it to where, you make life a little tougher on LSU, put yourself in a better position to win. But what you can't do is go 3 plays for 2 yards and a punt.
Right.
You can't do that. You absolutely cannot do that. And the series before that, 3 plays, negative 13 yards. Series before that, 4 plays, 0 yards. But you got a field goal because you recovered a fumble that went off of Garrett Nussmeier's face mask.
Right.
Like, look, those 3 drives right there, if you can convert that into a touchdown instead, you're not talking about missing a field goal at the end of the game to put it in overtime. There's so much more that you can control, too, that I think maybe just simplifying it to what happened with the officiating is I don't want to necessarily say a cop-out because it's all for interpretation with the Nussmeier play. I can see why they called it and why that was thrown and how you could have avoided it as a player. And I can also see where the frustration lies. But at the same time, that wasn't what beat you. The offense in the end of the game, not being able to sustain the drives necessary to win the game, is ultimately what cost you.
Get back into more of your phone calls on the other side, 803-404-6100. Hit some of you that are getting us on the Firehouse Subs text line as well. Same number, 803-404-6100. It's the postgame show. Is your HVAC system living on borrowed time? Or maybe you think your system is the oldest system in the Midlands? Man, there's an honor. Well, not really. If so, head over to AAA Heating and Air's new website, myoldAir.com, and enter to win a brand new HVAC system today. It's simple. AAA Heating and Air will draw one lucky winner for every 100 entries. You heard us right. A new HVAC system. If you got an old one, a junky one, let them know. But don't wait. Register today. Now, the contest is for a limited time only. Only residents within AAA's Heating and Air or AAA Heating and Air's service area are eligible to enter. See the terms and rules on the website, myoldAir.com. You can always call them up for anything else you need to, 803-677-1500. Tell them I sent you to AAA Heating and Air. And good luck on that new one. Welcome back to the Postgame Show on this Monday. Jay and Elijah with you. Don't forget tomorrow's Bruise Day here. We'll hear from Ryan.
Should be a good one.
Ryan, I think, had some encouraging things to say to folks after the game, and he'll say more of those tomorrow, in addition to some of the things that were critical.
Ryan's an optimist.
Yes.
I would definitely classify him as more of an optimist as a fan.
Got a hit on Twitter talking about the second pick six that was negated, and where Kyle Kennard hit Garrett Nussmeier. If the outside shoulder is in the head-neck area, I'm getting knee surgery on my ankle next week. Maybe can ask for a discount. Look, again.
That's hilarious.
I'm just telling you what they call it. And again, three dudes threw flags. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying I get it, and three guys threw flags, and you're not supposed to put your hands up on people's head, neck area.
And you know what? Sometimes when you're official and you're moving that fast and you see a body fly like that, it's not a reviewable play. Maybe if they looked at it, they review it and change it differently. But the hands were high.
They were.
And you cannot deny that those hands were high.
Right. So, it's just, again, man, and three flags thrown.
And the whole point that we're trying to make is that if the hands weren't as high and they're a little low, and that's more towards the sternum, then they're probably not calling it, more than likely.
More than likely. We've got a couple of Michaels on the line. So, Michael, the one of you that ends, your phone number ends in 8259. You're
going to dox our callers.
No, well, I won't say the rest of it, but hopefully that helps. Hey, Michael, how are you?
That's a first.
I'm good. How about y'all? Next time I go by Mike, that might work. But hopefully y'all are doing good today. And I figured a lot of the conversation today would be about the officials. I mean, there was some calls that, dictated the game a little bit. But I think us as fans, and especially Coach Beamer going into Akron, what we should focus on is on the plays that we didn't make to win the game and on the self-inflicted wounds we caused to ourselves. I know y'all mentioned it a little bit, but on that drive right after the interception, we had a 3rd and 2. And we got a false start, backed us up to 37, and that's when they got conservative and just ran Ashford to the right, no gain, punted it from our own, 2015, gave them excellent field position and all the time in the world to take the time on that last drive to score. If you don't have that false start penalty and you get the first down, even if you don't put a touchdown on the board or even put a field goal on the board, you at least set yourself up better field position-wise to pin them deep and make them drive the ball down the field, put a touchdown up in under 2 or 3 minutes left to go. And so there were a lot of times where we just had moments where we caused ourselves to take a step back. I mean, how many times did we have penalties where there was an offensive lineman down the field that caused us to have a play setback? I mean, that's been a problem all year.
It has.
And so I think if we focus more on that and focus more on how we didn't take the opportunities to take the game for ourselves, I think that will bode us well in the future when it comes to situations like that.
I agree, man. Good phone call, and I mean, you got to clean up your own mistakes too. That's a crucial part of it. Shane had multiple answers to questions about the penalty situation, but here is one of them on, especially the ones that might have been deemed a little more controversial.
In our team meeting yesterday, we talked about playing smart football and not getting caught up in anything post-whistle and things like that. We didn't have that. I mean, it was two really good teams going at it. We had some self-inflicted ones on offense, linemen downfield, receivers blocking downfield, things like that. That's disappointing. The two scores on defense, the first one they called a horse collar. They told me, or the coaches up in the box thought he got him on his shoulder, but the referee told me that he was absolutely certain that it was a horse collar. The pick six by Nick, that's a tough call in that situation. I saw it with my own eyes, and That's a tough call in that situation. Blindside block by any stretch of the imagination. I think Kyle was stationary when he hit him. I don't know. I mean, it was a bang-bang play, but as soon as the interception happened, we teach our guys, go block the quarterback, and because he's going to be probably the guy right there that can make the play. So immediately I got my eyes on the quarterback, and I watched it all. It wasn't like it was a running start, blindside block. Tough call. We'll talk to the SEC office and see what their thoughts are on that.
Certainly was a difference.
There you go. That was Shane with Todd Ellis on the coach's postgame show, and he echoed some of that in the postgame press conference as well, Elijah. And you were in there, and he did say in the postgame, just can't put yourself in that. His point being, can't put yourself in a position where they can use that against you. And that's something we've talked about a lot. Like, you don't give officials, just don't give them something. And I know it's easier said than done. And Shane's talking about it. Like, that's a fine line in the moment. And it's a tough one. It is. That's what I've said all day. It's a picky call. And you may have a lot of men in this country that are officials that don't throw that flag. I get that part of it too. Just don't give them anything. I guess why I say the hands are just 6 inches lower. And you and I are in complete agreement, and I think most of you that listen out there are too, then it's not called. But giving them something to think about, you run that risk. And unfortunately for Kyle and for the Gamecocks, a magnificent 100-yard return was pulled off the board. You got the ball, and again, like our last caller just said, you got the ball, then you didn't do anything with it.
That's the shame, man. That's the shame. And that's the entire second half for the South Carolina team. I mean, really, if you want to break down the offensive drive chart in the second half, here's every drive of the second half. Jay Phillips, 3 plays, 5 yards punt. 3 plays, -4 yards punt. 3 plays, 75-yard touchdown from a 66-yarder by Rocket Sanders. Very nice. 4 plays, 0 yards. Field goal, got ball via Van Nussmeier fumble off his face mask. 3 plays, -13 yards, fumble, lost it, gave LSU the ball in LSU territory. Didn't help your defense out much at all. 7 plays, 44 yards, missed field goal as time expired. All in all, that is 25 plays for 133 yards, 66 of which were on 1 play, and field position was not an issue.
Yeah.
With the exception of them turning the ball over on downs on the 1. Other than that, you had pretty reasonable field position for all of it. That's really the reason why you lost the game. And Robbie did some good things, especially getting you in position to kick a field goal to send the game to overtime. But you just did not do enough as an offense to be able to threaten down the field to just get yourself in a position to win the game and put more points on the board. Because that's really the biggest difference in this game was you scored at will in the first half. You didn't score at will in the second half. And your defense was on the field for way more plays than they were in the first. They got a little tired. Tackling got a whole lot harder, especially with the corners and your secondary. Tackling got a little worse. Some of the fundamental stuff starts to slip when you do run 25 of the 31 plays on the field as a defense, and that can add up and get you into the position it got.
LSU adjusted better than you. Period. Yeah. And again, unfortunately for South Carolina, your adjustment had to come from the fact that you lost your quarterback.
Yes, and that's a really tough thing to overcome. The game was a perfect storm of things that can happen to you to lose a 17-point lead, which is why I'm not going to say, they choked or anything like that, because you can't. I mean, look, there were some things you can control you'd like to have back, but you also lost your quarterback. There were some bad breaks, just by the way football goes, that keep you from winning that game.
Let's get back on the phones. Frank is up next. Hey, Frank, good afternoon.
Hey, guys, I'm not trying to belabor the point. I'm very frustrated. The Florida game last year was a lot like this, except it wasn't the officials that had a definite impact on the loss. We just blew it. But this year, the officials had a major impact on that game, and all the majority of the negative things that happened were against us. And I firmly believe if we were wearing Alabama uniforms, Tennessee uniforms, LSU uniforms, for example, those calls were not going to be made. There were some bogus calls, a pass interference that nobody could explain, an LSU player going out of bounds on his own, coming back in, catching a pass, it being called a complete pass, no questions. And the horse collar. The guy was grabbed by his shirt, pulled back. He wasn't forced to the ground forcefully. He just lost his balance and fell back.
Yeah, but you can't do that anymore. And that's been a point of emphasis that was explained to every coach and every team that you can't do that anymore. Do we ever get clarification on the kid running out of bounds? I was under the impression that he was forced out of bounds.
Yeah, if you're forced out of bounds, you can come back in and be the first one to touch it if the referee deems you were forced out.
And again, that could be a gray area, but I think that they deemed that he was not out of bounds on his own. And if I'm not mistaken, was that the same play where there was the juggle? That's not the same play. Now I can't remember.
Think so.
No? Okay.
There were a lot of plays in that football game.
Yeah.
It was long.
Listen, Frank, I get your frustration. One thing, I've done this a long time. I've covered this conference professionally since the 1995 football season. So I've been around it for almost all the time that Carolina was in it. And I covered them when I was in school in journalism. I know a lot of fans of schools like Carolina and Mississippi State and Vandy and Arkansas want to believe that the refs are out to get them or that there's a subjectivity there. I don't like taking my mind there. Sometimes crap happens, and it sucks.
Every school in the SEC has a game in their history where they can.
I mean, when Bama plays LSU, how do the refs feel or something like that? You're listening to the Postgame Show.
We can talk about good calls and bad calls all the time, especially when it comes to officiating. But you know what a good call is? I know what a good call is. That's using my friend's Columbia Secret for Weight Loss to help achieve your weight loss goal. It was a good call for me because I was able to achieve that goal in a month's time. I wanted to lose 15 to 20 pounds. My friends Paul, Grant, and Shaylin helped me out in doing so in the best way that I've been able to use a lot of what I learned with them and what made it so successful into the future for a more sustainable and healthy living, and I feel better than I have in a long, long time. And right now, they're celebrating being in the Midlands, over a year now. Their 1-year anniversary deal, buy one, get one free, is still going strong up until September 30th, so you can experience this weight loss program with a loved one or a friend. If that interests you, give them a call, 803-824-4210. That's 803-824-4210 to learn the secret of losing up to 1 pound of unhealthy fat per day and starting your own success story, or go to ColumbiaSecretForWeightLoss.com. Results may vary. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways around town. We'll start with the ones here in Richland County. We have an accident on Cushman Drive at Two Notch Road. Another one on Farrow Road at Highway 555 at I-77. One on Gervais Street near Hugh G. Street, and one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road at Park Lane Road and Decker Boulevard. In Lexington County, we have 3 of them. One on I-20 eastbound at Longs Pond Road near exit 51, one on 26 East at I-77 near exit 116, and lastly, one on Zimmelcrest Drive at Bush River Road.
Talking a lot of Carolina LSU. Difficult loss for the Gamecocks, 36-33 after having a 17-0 lead. And Alex Herrera's potential game-tying field goal sailing just to the left as it got to the goalpost. I thought he had it, man. Had the leg. Thought he had it.
Yeah, see, I hate watching those plays in the press box because my depth perception isn't good enough. Like for where I'm sitting, every kick looks good unless it's missed, sure. At an atrocious level. Yeah. So when it went up, all I could do was look over at the crowd and the officials. I didn't even watch the ball at all. And immediately, as soon as that thing got to it, like you said, about the 10-yard line, was when I could see the visible, the surrender cobras from the kids in the stands or the officials, waving it no good. And yeah, that's a tough way to lose it.
That was a tough one. A lot of you wanting to talk officiating, we get it. And again, there was controversy. No one's denying that. Now the last caller, I'm sorry, as somebody who's been covering this school and this conference a long time, I don't, for any school, I do not buy into the if we were wearing different. I know sometimes there's a level of subjectivity even with human beings. All right, people used to say it about Dean Smith all the time when he was coaching Chapel Hill. Like if Dean pointed one way, well, the official was going to do it because, Dean said it must have gone out on the other guy. So I understand that. I'm not here to take anybody to task or tell you, come on. But I don't – look, I just think this was an overzealous officiating crew. And on that note, I want to play you 2 cuts from Shane. Then we're going to talk about it, and we got more calls. But I want you all to hear what the head coach himself had to say. So 15 and 16 on our list. And I'm going to have Elijah these were asked basically back-to-back in the post-game presser. So we're going to play these and let you hear what Shane had to say. Hit it, sir.
You're not going to win football games in the SEC with 13 penalties. I don't know if I've ever seen 2 defensive touchdowns come back because of penalties. And not just the defensive penalties. I know those are the ones you guys are going to ask about, but offensively, big plays that came back because of receivers blocking downfield when we shouldn't be, or linemen downfield, or quarterback scrambles on an RPO. And we got to be better there, and that starts with me as the head football coach. From a penalty standpoint, we've been a disciplined group, and it's disappointing too because in our team meeting yesterday afternoon, we have a team meeting every Friday afternoon where we just talk about situational football and teams across the country. Great examples of teams doing what they're supposed to do, and bad examples of teams not doing what they're supposed to do. And that was the bulk of yesterday's meeting is playing clean football and not getting into any of the post whistle stuff, which we didn't get into any of the post whistle stuff. I mean, it was a clean game from that standpoint, but way too many self-inflicted mistakes. And
all right, so there's part one of this. Again, now about another minute from Shane, more specifically on the 2 calls on Kyle Kennard, each of which negated a pick six.
I think the first one with O'Donnell, they said it was, a horse collar on the quarterback. Coaches up top told me that they thought he just grabbed the shoulder pad and pulled him down, but the referee, Jason, he's fantastic, and he told me that he was absolutely certain that when we hit the quarterback that it was a horse collar. So if he said it, I'm sure it happened. And then the The one at the end with Nick, I watched it. I mean, anytime there's an interception, we tell our guys, find the quarterback and make sure we get him blocked. And it wasn't, it wasn't vicious by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one of those situations. If you're the referee in that situation, it's right in front of you. I mean, I watched it because I looked for the quarterback and I saw it, and can't put ourselves in that position.
And that's the hard part. Again, does it make it? I'm not here for right, wrong, too subjective. You can feel the frustration in Shane's voice. And one of the things that we have said about it today, at least the two of us here on air, it is a picky call. But it's not an unheard of call. And I just 100% agree with the head coach on the very last thing he said right there. Don't put yourself in that position. And I've probably said it 10 times today, so let me make it 11, or however many times I may have said it. And you have too, Elijah. If Kyle's hands are 6 inches lower and everything else is equal, then you're not likely to get that flag thrown, or flags, because, again, 3 officials threw their flags.
Because at the core of officiating, right, what makes some calls more frustrating than others is the idea that there's nothing you could do to rectify a situation if you feel like you've played within, the boundaries of the rules, which in football, like, unfortunately, there are a lot of rules in football, and a lot of them have a lot of gray area, right? Like, reading through a football rule book is one of the most laborious things one could do in terms of choosing reading material, because there's not a lot of definitive answers for certain things. A lot of it is up to interpretation. Mm-hmm. And for something like Kyle Kennard's play on the Edmund Warry pick six, it's like, yeah, it's unfortunate that they chose to call it right there, because it like what you said, the word picky, I think, accurately describes what it was. It was very picky. But if you do the one thing you can control, and that's hand placement, then they have to really, really stretch. I mean, like, hopefully you don't tear anything from stretching that hard to throw the flag, right? It's just one of those things, too. Like, yeah, it's very minimal. It is a detail within a detail within a detail of the football game. But there was a controllable element to that, and you just didn't do it. And at the end of the day, it's the controllable elements that you can correct in future play to get yourself out of that position. I think ultimately that's all you really can do, right? Especially if you're a coach. Going into a post-game presser and trying to rip an official and get a fine is not the way to go about it, because you can't fix that, right? What you can look at in terms of, like, holding players accountable, making sure this doesn't happen again, is look at that play and say, yes, does it feel like that? Yeah, we got jobbed because of that? Absolutely. But let's not put ourselves in a position to let people who are not great at their jobs get us out of a game, right? Because if you go into every game hoping SEC officiating gives you a hand, buddy, let me tell you something, right? Like this type of stuff is baked in. Yeah, it is baked into every single result. Every single one. I don't know a single human being that watched an SEC football or basketball or baseball game being like, you know what, the officiating ruled. Right. That was awesome. Yeah, high five. John McDade, pat yourself on the back. No one does that. So at the end of the day, controlling what you can control is the best thing you could possibly do, and worrying about things that you can control ultimately is what helps you move on as a football team.
Let's get to Mike up next on the phone lines. Mike, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
A lot of Mikes today.
Good. How you doing?
All right.
You guys doing all right?
Yeah, we're trying.
Listen, it was a rough loss, but I want to try to put things into perspective for everybody. We've got a head coach that's trying to bring us back to relevance. We've got a head coach that's got a special teams program that had the national announcing crew showing us one of our special teams players getting put on full scholarship. We've got a head coach that's got a 5-star freshman right tackle. We've got a head coach that's got a redshirt, highly rated quarterback running our offense, throwing the ball to another highly rated true freshman receiver. And we've got a highly rated 5-star edge rusher that's wreaking havoc on opposing teams' quarterbacks. So, I mean, instead of complaining, how about jumping on a bandwagon, guys? We're in for a heck of a ride.
Well, Mike, and thank you. And we tried to say that at the top of the show as well.
He's right.
Yeah, you are. He is right. Everything he said is accurate. And I know, look, sports fans don't always want to hear those things. That's why I said you want silver lining or lead lining. That's why I didn't go out into the social media ether yesterday on this particular game. Let it breathe. There are big takeaways, good takeaways from this game.
Mm-hmm.
You did have 2 pick sixes. You're putting yourself in position to make these plays. You did have 2 big explosive touchdowns that did count. You had a couple other nice plays that showed your sheer athleticism that unfortunately again did get negated because of silly procedural stuff. But it's fixable. Work on yourself this week to a large degree. Yes, you have a game. Next week you do not. There are positives to take. I think you showed a lot of people that you're a better football team than they believed you to be just 72 hours ago.
think you look at the tape, David, and there'll be a lot to, correct, like any game. I mean, there was a lot to correct after the Kentucky game as well. Obviously, we got to clean up a lot, but there's a lot to build up on as well. And we all got to be better, starting with me and offense, defense, special teams.
Shane Beamer in postgame, 36-33. The Gamecocks fall to LSU. Carolina heavy favorites over Akron Saturday night at Williams-Brice. I believe the line opened at 27. I have not checked it in the last few hours, so I don't know if it's moving this afternoon or not, for whatever that might be worth to you. And then an off week, and then Ole Miss comes to town.
Bye week comes at a good time.
Yeah, it does.
When is it not? When is it not coming at a good time? But, I mean, to prepare for a game like Ole Miss, that could be a big, big opportunity.
Obviously, we've been very busy on the phones. We do appreciate your patience. Andy up next on the Postgame Show. Hey, buddy.
Hey, guys, I got three things I want to mention, two in jest, but not really. First thing is, I love how we kept running up the middle. It was there all day long. We just kept going up the middle. We got nowhere. There was so many wasted downs. Because there was we got one-dimensional and there was no creativity. A lot of it was coaching, I think, and I'll stand by that. I said that Saturday, and I'll stand by it. The other thing is somebody needs to get Beamer to tell them that it's not holding if they have the ball in their hands. There were so many missed tackles, so many non-wrap-ups. That was bad. Not a lot of people are talking about that, but that was a big problem. And thirdly, the officials didn't we didn't lose the game because of the officials, but they didn't help. Toward the end, there was that one last pass where he scrambled, he threw it. Our guy made a miraculous catch because he was interfered with, but it got called back. But he was interfered with, but they didn't call it. If he'd have dropped that ball, do you think they might have called interference? Or because he caught it, they're like, he didn't interfere with him. He obviously caught it. And I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to go back and see that one again.
Talking about the Mazio Bennett play?
I guess
or
so.
A flag, yeah. That was the one I took the most issue with, honestly. I thought that was the one that was probably the most egregious, where I couldn't see, if you're running your route, man, I don't see exactly where the interference could have possibly been. And to his point of, do you call it if the pass isn't caught? It's kind of like in basketball, right? Like if LeBron James is going down the lane and he gets hacked, but he makes, the bucket, sometimes they won't call it, but they'll wait to see if it goes in or not to call like that. You see that happen in basketball a ton, and maybe a little bit of an element.
And I'm certain too
in ref psychology.
Yeah, I'm certain, Andy, that Mazio call is going to be one where Shane and the staff they want the explanation. But you made a point earlier, Elijah, and again, this has to do with the sport of football, not this specific game. But understand sometimes in the moment how much of this is subject, quite literally, to that person's interpretation in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it really frustrating for fans across the country. Every day. Every day we do this. And I don't know here's the thing. And this isn't me defending anybody as much as just kind of telling you why nothing's going to be done. This is why they don't have refs do post games in any sport. Refs, umps. I mean, Lord knows I'd like to see as much Major League Baseball as I watch.
No one would be an umpire if you had to do post game for 162.
And I think that's it for football. And that's basically what they tell us. They don't say it that way, but they basically say if we don't protect them to a larger degree in the public, no one will want to do it. And if we don't have people doing it, then we're really in trouble. And I think too, and again, this is just me observing as a guy who works in sports. But I think to some of these high school officiating crews that are doing, single A and double A games at places all across America.
God bless you.
Making $50, $75. And people in the stands are just screaming at them like it's the Super Bowl. Again, I've seen Nimrod dads at church league basketball going nuts on a ref. I'm like, y'all, these kids are 10. They don't care.
Okay? It ain't that deep.
And there's nothing on the line here other than when are we getting our fruit snacks?
Or maybe, if you win, you get that Pizza Hut buffet, which
now and again,
I would throw a McEnroe-esque fit to not get a Pizza Hut buffet. But really, that's the only.
And I realize an SEC football game or an NFL game or a Major League Baseball game does have higher stakes. So I'm not trying to equate church league refs with SEC refs. But my point being, you got to have people do it. That doesn't mean you're going to get great ones. And when you do get the great ones, a lot of the dudes that are really good at it move on to the NFL. Heck, the NFL won't even make their refs full-time, despite the fact that there's a big clamor for it. Like, they'd be even better, but they're going to make bad calls. Doesn't excuse it. And they do pay a price. Sometimes they're no longer officials. Sometimes they don't get the good games or the bonus money. Again, I'm not trying to make you feel better. But if you're wondering, why don't they do something about it? They do. We just don't know what it is. And I don't think we're going to find out. Hour 3 coming up.
It's a secret.
Oh, it's fall. That means a lot more yard work in most of our futures, whether you cut your own or rake your own or, use the blower on your own yard or you do all those things for a living. You need to see my good friends Ben and Matt and the crew at Cato's Power Equipment. Excellent sales, service, and advice. Some great deals right now on steel chainsaws, steel backpack blowers. Listen, we got a little tropical thing coming through here, right? And there might be another one before the season ends. You need to get those limbs cut up real quick, get all the leaves and debris taken care of, especially, again, if you do it for a living, on to the next job. But I'm going to be seeing the guys here pretty soon about a new blower because, I like to keep the yard looking nice. But I also want to do it in a lot less time. Love my Toro Time Master mower. Now it's time to get in a few things there. And they got some great deals on steel products right now. Family owned and operated since 1983, 4012 West Beltline Boulevard. Always online, catospowerequipment.com.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, and we'll start with the ones in Richland County. We got an accident on Faro Road at Highway 555 at I-77, one on Gervais Street near Hugh G. Street, another one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road at Park Lane Road and Decker Boulevard. And in Lexington County, we have a few. to get to. So we'll start with one on Bar Road near Wildlife Road. Another accident on 20 eastbound over at Longs Pond Road near exit 51. One on 26 east at I-77 near exit 116. And one on Zimmelcrest Drive at Bush River Road.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Monday. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the Postgame Show. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. We've been very busy talking Carolina LSU. The Tigers coming into Williams-Brice, and after being down 17 points, eking out a 36-33 win. That takes LSU to 2-1 overall, their first game in conference play, so they're 1-0. Carolina also 2-1. They fall to 1-1 in the SEC. Akron in town next for the Gamecocks. That's a 7:30 start on Saturday. For the Gamecocks, there were a lot of positives. 398 total yards, 155 of them through the air. Rocket Sanders with some big plays. LSU, 417 total yards, 285 through the air. Nussmeier, I thought, was very, very good, and yet had a couple of big mistakes taken away, at least from a Gamecock perspective, because of penalties, which is good, obviously, for LSU. The Gamecocks commit 13 penalties for 123 yards against them. LSU, 9 penalties called for 75 yards. Carolina, 3 turnovers. LSU lost the ball twice. Shane Beamer was asked in postgame what his message to the team was after this kind of game.
I told them that I'm proud as heck of them. They just kept coming. We put our defense in some tough situations today, and our offense got put in some tough situations, obviously, with some injuries. We made a lot of really good plays today. We're going to go back and look at this tape. There's a lot of really good performances, I think, offense, defense, and special teams. And I just told them that we play smart football. There's 5 things that we tell it's about how we win football games around here, and playing smart football is one of them. And we just didn't do a great job of that today. So I told them that we've obviously, it's in this league, man, it's a thin line between winning and losing, and when you have 13 penalties, more often than not, you're going to be on the wrong side of that. But I also told them that I thought we got better this week. I thought for as dominant as we were in a lot of ways in Lexington last week, we got better in some ways this week, particularly offensively. And just told them that we got to go right back to work, and then I'm going to do a better job for them, for sure. But we got to play smarter football. But at the same time, every goal that we have as a football team is still in front of us, and we were a very confident team going into this game. We're a very confident team coming out of this game. Every goal that we have is still right there in front of us if we can continue to get better. But that's an LSU team that's going to win a lot of football games this season that many people think is a playoff type team. And we just went toe-to-toe with them and fell a little bit short.
And that's an accurate description. You did go toe-to-toe, and over 60 minutes, perhaps the better team won. And you don't want to feel as a fan that you were beaten by multiple things. We talked a lot about it today. For those of you just tuning in, yes, there were controversial penalties that were called. There are a couple of them that were picky, but We've had a cut from Shane already that also says don't put yourself in that position. And he mentioned there, we've got to get better. There are things we can do, and he's right. I mentioned in my opening comments at the 3 o'clock hour, you might have something, again, I referred to it as kind of a boot camp, a training camp, a little bit this week and certainly a lot more next week, where you've got to get in and work on work on a lot of those fundamentals before the meat of the conference schedule comes. You got 3 incredibly difficult games in the month of October. But here's Shane on trying to clean up at least some of those mistakes.
Go like we always do. We try and educate our guys on them and just, be smarter. A lot of them, Jack, can just come from, getting lined up the right way and executing, and that starts with us as coaches, and some of those were, RPO type plays that the quarterback scrambled, and then you're going to have linemen blocking downfield on some of those, but got to go back and look at it, and obviously do an even more of a job of emphasizing it. We've been pretty good around here about penalties and not having a lot of them, and we weren't today.
We'll have more from the Gamecocks coming up in the 5:15 segment, including what I think was a great question from Elijah about where the team was after halftime. We'll get into that and more for you in just a little bit. Continuing our headlines of the day, the new AP poll is out. Texas has become the number 1 team there. Now, Georgia is still a heavy number 1 in the coaches poll. Coaches look at it and go, well, they won the game. The sports writers and media members are like, yeah, but how did you win?
Coaches or the SIDs or their dogs?
Well, whomever, right? But nevertheless.
Under the guise of the coach's name.
But Texas picked up 35 first-place votes. It's very tight, 1,540 total points to 1,518 for Georgia. But the dogs did not look good against Kentucky, or Kentucky looked really strong against Georgia.
I'm telling you, there is a fatal flaw in Georgia's offense. That's not being able to stretch the ball downfield.
Yeah, they got to work on that.
That's a valid question mark.
I think they're off this week, so Georgia will be working on themselves before they play Alabama.
You ought to.
Yeah. Ohio State picked up the other 5 first-place votes. They are 3rd, Bama 4th, Ole Miss 5th, Tennessee 6th, Missouri down a spot despite a win at 7. That's kind of harsh. Boston College was ranked.
They're the only team. Them and Kansas State were the only 2 teams in America that got ranked wins this past week.
Come on, that's not cool. And I'm not here to. Did I just say something wasn't cool and it worked against Missouri? Like, I shouldn't even be that way.
I thought you were getting ready to pop a champagne bottle when you came in here and figured out they only won by 6 points.
That was mean of me, I guess. Miami 8, Oregon 9, Penn State number 10, Southern Cal 11, followed by Utah, K-State, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma at 15. LSU holds steady at 16 after the win here in Columbia. Notre Dame up a spot. Man, does Purdue?
Man, that left me puzzled as to, was the Northern Illinois game such a fluke, or was maybe Northern Illinois is that good?
66-7.
Do we put Northern Illinois in the college football playoff, Jay Phillips?
Well, they are up 2 spots. We'll get to them in a second. Notre Dame is 17th, Michigan 18, Louisville 19, Iowa State is number 20, Clemson is 21, then it's Nebraska, Northern Illinois, followed by Illinois, and Texas A&M. South Carolina did receive votes in both polls. I think. Well, no, I don't think they got any in the coaches poll. Trying to see here. No, not in the coaches poll, but they did get a few in the AP poll. Again, Carolina and Akron coming up on Saturday. To the NFL, news out of Charlotte today. Head coach Dave Canales saying that Bryce Young will be benched in favor of Andy Dalton after post-game comments where Coach Canales said, no, he's the guy. He becomes the first quarterback selected number 1 in the common draft era, that's since 1967, to be benched for non-injury reasons in his second season. Canales said he made the change after they reviewed the film of what was a humbling 26-3 loss that wasn't even that close yesterday.
I love how he had to watch film to make sure it was that bad, which only tells me, Jay Phillips, that my BS detector is beeping so hard that it busted its speaker. It can't beep anymore because that's a total lie. Like, there is no way that he watched that same game on the sidelines and needed a film review to backpedal something he already said publicly less than 24 hours earlier. I'm telling you, the call came from inside the house. I can't be convinced otherwise.
He was asked whether David Tepper had any say in the decision. He simply said
I'm sure he was very honest.
that General Manager Dan Morgan and Vice President of the team Brant Tillis were part of the discussion, but said this was my decision.
I'm a big boy. This was my decision.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Can't fool me.
Young's 8.9 QBR after 2 games, reading verbatim here from David Newton, is by far the worst in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks this season. Chicago's Caleb Williams is next at 23.9.
Sizable gap.
Yeah. Andy Dalton is going to be 37 years old next month. He's your guy. And to salvage what exactly?
What's this going to do?
I mean, you're not making the playoffs anyway. This is just to not be getting you the worst record in football for 3 straight years. By the way, it is official with the Jets winning yesterday and the Panthers losing yesterday. Since David Tepper took over, the Panthers are now literally the worst team in football since he bought the team. Make of that what you will.
Congrats, DT. You're killing it. Attaboy.
Yeah. They were tied, again, with the Jets. The Jets, who have, for a couple of generations, become the true symbol of futility in the National Football League.
You don't want to be in a classification with the Jets or Browns in the last 25 years.
No.
You don't.
Heck, dude, I'll take you farther back than 25. I know that's your time frame, but I'm telling you, going back to they were decent in the late 70s. They had the New York Sack Exchange. They had
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, they had Joe Klecko and Mark Gastineau, I think, and they were pretty good. Well, they weren't really, but they were better. And then they had that little run like 15 years ago where they made a couple of AFC title games.
With the Sanchez.
People were like, well, man, where'd that come from? And otherwise.
I know where it went. It went into the backside of a Jets offensive lineman. Right. After the butt fumble, it was all downhill from there. That was the beginning of the end, the beginning of a very hilarious end.
Continuing our integrated media headlines of the day, massive congratulations to Columbia's own Asia Wilson. She became the first player in the history of the WNBA to score 1,000 points in a season as her Aces beat Connecticut 84-71. A little fadeaway jumper with a couple of minutes left. There was a big celebration. It says here by Michael Vopel, she's the overwhelming favorite for the 2024 MVP award. Bro. There is a number 2.
No. This is the one person ballot.
I mean, listen, there's been some other players that are having really good seasons. And Caitlin Clark will be the runaway rookie of the year. But Angel Reese has had a solid rookie season. There is no one better on planet Earth than and there were even topics today I saw trending. Might Asia Wilson be headed towards becoming the best player ever? Yes. I don't know if she's going to be. I don't know that. But is she headed that way? Yes, she is.
And if she reaches that plateau, would anybody around here be surprised? No. Absolutely not.
So, congratulations to Asia Wilson. Finally, the Atlanta Braves lost last night. They were up 2-1 in the 8th, man. And then the Dodgers said, it's enough of that. 9-2 final. But the Braves had one on Friday and Saturday, which is nice. This is a 4-game set, so they'll close it out tonight in Atlanta, with the Braves and Mets tied once again for that final wild card spot. Yoshinobu Yamamoto goes for the Dodgers. He is 6-2 with a 2.77. Max Fried for the Braves, 9-9 with a 3.46, 7:20 first pitch. And I'd recommend the Braves win this game.
Yeah, I recommend they win the rest of them. That's my game plan.
Most
if
of the
you
rest.
don't, you listen to me and take my advice if you want, but ignore it at your detriment.
Yeah. There you go. All right, more on the Gamecocks, more of your phone calls as well on this Reaction Monday. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Too often guys don't go to the doctor when they're just, feeling kind of off. I'm fine. My granddad never would have gone to the doctor. Why should I? Don't be that guy. All right? Do it for yourself. Do it for those around you. Go see Dr. Dan Balknight and his team at the men's clinic and get to feeling better. Get to feeling the way you used to, the way you want to. They are experts in healthcare for men, and they're dedicated to making you feel like yourself again. You'll get a one-on-one consultation with Dan. It'll get to the root of the issue and back to you feeling like you want to, because Dan will get to know you. What are the things you do every day? Where might there be some gaps? What is it that exactly feels off? No such thing as a one-size-fits-all treatment at the men's clinic. Learn more when you log on to themensclinicsc.com and set up that consultation by calling 803-875-MENS, the Men's Clinic. Welcome back into the Postgame Show on this Monday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Full bank of phone calls. Again, thanks for the patience on what has been a very busy reaction Monday. Carolina falling to LSU 36-33. Get back into some more sound from Shane in just a bit, but let's get back to hear from you guys. Thomas is up next. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, guys. Let me say this. I think our team had a good learning curve. Okay, not a good loss, because there's no such thing as a good loss. A good learning curve, meaning that I think if they learn that if they don't listen to the outside noise everybody hits the field and get 100%, that they could play with anybody and they could be in the game. And that proved this past Saturday, with everybody giving 100%, we was right there to the end. Now, the three calls that everybody been talking about, the one where they say the guy was forced out. I understand the forced out rule, but I think what they was looking at was when he caught the ball, was his knee out of bounds when he caught it. Okay, and I thought it was out, but of course they didn't. Okay, the other one was the horse collar. I thought it was more that he had the jersey more at the shoulder pad level side of the jersey, okay, and where he pulled the guy back. And I know that's a iffy call. And the third one is when Kennard, our guys have to be smart. Whenever there's a turnover on offense, that white hat, he's looking at the quarterback. He's looking for anybody going after the quarterback. And, and it wasn't a vicious hit when he went up there, a two-hand push, but it was just one of them things where I think they felt that he was going after the quarterback intentionally. And he
was. Thank you. And he was, Thomas. And again, I've said, and I believe this, that the exact same everything Kyle Kennard does, but the hands are 6 inches lower, and I don't believe that to be a penalty. But it's up around the head neck area, and as Shane has said, and we played the clip a couple of times today. You can't put yourself in that position. Or as Elijah and I have said, don't give them something to think about, especially when you're asking them to think about it in about a second to a second and a half. And 3 officials threw their flag on that one. Look, it's hard. It's hard. And I mentioned in my open, and I don't mean it to say it was all the officials. It does feel like sometimes three teams beat South Carolina or at least contributed. Mm-hmm. Okay? And there were only 3 teams out there, and one of them isn't technically a team.
Hey, losing is a team effort, too, even involving other teams. This was a team's effort.
But the Gamecocks did things to themselves. LSU is really good, y'all. You weren't playing Monroe.
That's something else that's being lost in this, too.
I mean, we're just not talking enough about the fact that was LSU.
I mean, because all we've talked about with Garrett Nussmeier throughout this show are the plays in question of the penalties and the pick sixes. But he made some throws in that game, man, that are big boy throws.
Big time.
That touchdown to Kyron Lacey was a big time read on the RPO. And he pulled it out. He pulled that ball out of the chest of the running back as soon as he saw Nick Emenwari take 2 steps toward him and layered it over his shoulder. And Jalen Kilgore was not in a position naturally, because that's a very hard play to stop when executed perfectly. And it was executed perfectly. He made some throws, man. He made some throws under duress that were really good. I mean, the national narrative of this game isn't that, South Carolina blew it. I think it's more so the national narrative of this game, from everything I've listened to, is that's a gutsy win for LSU, too. I mean, they went down 17-0, and that place was loud. Like, again, I commend everybody that was in that stadium for making it a hostile environment, because that was one of the coolest environments I've ever been in. And I've been to a lot of college football games, covered a lot, attended a lot at some pretty large stadiums and really nice venues, and that was as good as it gets anywhere. That was an awesome environment, and you got them down 17-0. Any team, I don't care who they are, what conference they're in, you're down 17-0 in that type of environment, especially after you're getting worked on the line of scrimmage. Coming back to win that game is gutsy, and it's commendable. Like, LSU is a good football team. Jay Daniels ain't walking through that door. Neither is Joe Burrow, but I don't think he has to for them to be a really good football team.
Nussmeier's ability to keep his eyes downfield and locked in on the play, very impressive. The youngster Caden Durham, the tailback, I thought had a really nice day. They found ways to get that going. So we do need to give the Louisiana State University football team plenty of credit here, and I do think that is, and I get it. In a loss, you want to focus on what you didn't do or what you think was done to you, and part of what was done to you is LSU's adjustments at halftime, especially, were spot on, and they did. I don't want to say you got quote out coached. That's not what I'm saying, but LSU's adjustments were much better. And remember, South Carolina's adjustments were predicated upon an injured quarterback, and that does alter the landscape. It's not an excuse. It's part of what happened.
It's an ingredient to the large casserole that is that loss, right? Like there's not one ingredient that makes or breaks, a casserole sometimes, depending on what it is. But there's a lot of ingredients. One of those ingredients is Lenore Sellers getting hurt and taking away the passing game you had. Because in the first half, your passing game was efficient. Yes, you had the interception. That was a bad pick, and I know Lenore would want that back. But for the most part, the decision-making was really good.
Outside shoulder.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, it's just
but for the most part, I mean, the offense, the play calling for that first drive, immaculate.
Yeah.
You found a play. The play where they throw it to Josh Simon out in the flat, and Josh Simon gets to do some work with the ball in his hands is magic. Like that's where Josh Simon's utilized at his best. It's a throw. Lenoris has got timed really well. Has really good chemistry with Jared Brown. They connected on multiple first downs, one of which was a bomb and the best throw we have seen from Lenore Sellers all year. But when he goes out of the game, that changes the dynamic a little bit. So you have some bad breaks with officiating. You have the bad break of Lenoris getting hurt and really not being able to play in the second half at all. You have the bad breaks of not being able to get to Nussmeier as much because, yes, fatigue's going to set in when one team's running 25 plays and you run 6 in a quarter that ended up being really pivotal to what happened at the end of the game. All of that is kind of what transpires. Oh, and LSU being good. Like, that's a good football team. Yeah. Let me throw that ingredient in there too. That's all what has to happen for you to still only lose at the buzzer.
Let's get to Steven up next on the Postgame Show. Hey, Steven, how are you?
Doing okay, man. Been on hold for a while, and understandably so. But I'll preface this by saying that I like you and Elijah. But Elijah's segment, like, I don't know, it was probably 3 segments ago, like, where he was talking about like nobody talks about the referees when they do anything good, and you're right, they don't, and they shouldn't. Like, the referees should be like inconsequential to the game, right? Like.
That's the goal, yes. That's certainly the ideal, yes.
Yeah, they're doing their baseline job. Like, they shouldn't be a part of the narrative at all. So the fact that they are, number one, is a problem. Number two, like, they definitely made questionable calls against us. We got, obviously, the 2 pick sixes. Nobody's even talking about the 2-point conversion. I mean, it's crazy. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And also, that being said, and I'll get off, but, I mean, the fact that that we went as long as we did, and even still, after all the adversity, and this is disappointing to say, but, I mean, we had essentially 2 attempts at the same field goal to tie the game. That's also bad. But, I mean, like, don't try to sugarcoat the fact that, I mean, we did get hammered by the referees. And Jay, you've been doing it too. Like, I don't like it. Like, Shane, I mean, everybody sugarcoated what Shane said in the press conference, but he can't say anything. No, we definitely got rubbed the wrong way. For sure.
Well, a lot of people feel that way, Stephen, and you can feel how you feel. Again, Brian Kelly believes that the block punt shouldn't have been a block punt, that was an illegal play. All right? And he's not saying it because, he's mad that they won the game or anything like that. He doesn't want it to happen again in the future. Listen, well, and the 2-point play, that was, again,
an RPO where that took a little too long to develop, and that has happened to them a lot this year. That's not the first incident.
And that's one of the things they're going to have to clean up.
And as a point of emphasis with SEC officials this year is the illegal man downfield, because so many teams run these run-pass option plays.
And they're looking for it.
Sometimes allow for, if it's not timed correctly, that's a consequence of that happening.
And what you may end up seeing on that note, I might add, and I need to ask, those in the business, but because of how offenses have changed over the last couple of decades, is that something that they may want to look at from a rules perspective? because it's not an outdated or antiquated rule per se, but because there is a gray area, might they want to change some of the parameters of how that rule is looked at? Listen, Stephen, I'm not. Again, I'm never going to be here to tell anybody how to feel. You feel how you feel, and I have said multiple times today, I get the frustration. The one thing I didn't agree with was a caller earlier. He said if we had been wearing another uniform, this wouldn't happen to us. I do not believe that in any way, shape, or form. I do not believe that. If you do believe that, fine. I do not believe that. But like I say, these are subject to humans. They're not out there to job you. But like Shane has said, and this isn't sugarcoating, Shane said we can't put ourselves in position to be judged that way.
That's reality.
That's the thing you got to work on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing.
The phrase "make your own luck" is a real phrase that is applicable to a lot of things in life, not just football.
And this won't be the first or last time that we talk about officials and what they do in a sporting contest. This is the Postgame Show.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways this afternoon. All of these are going to be in Lexington County, it looks like, starting with one on Barr Road near Wildlife Road. Got another one on I-20 eastbound at Longs Pond Road near Exit 51. Another one on Old Barnwell Road at Emmanuel Church Road. And lastly, one on US 378 over at Priceville Road and Bola Church Road.
It is Drive Around the SEC time. We'll get back into y'all's calls in just a second. Again, appreciate your patience on what has been, as you can imagine, a very busy day. 2 other conference games on Saturday. We'll start with the one in Lexington where Georgia had to hold on for dear life against Kentucky. Final score 13-12. Again, costing Georgia for now at least the number 1 spot in the AP poll. Kirby won't sweat that one too much, I wouldn't think. But Kentucky's defense that we thought we would see against South Carolina, and at times we did, really came through. Carson Beck was not good. 15 of 24 for 160 yards, and Georgia ran for only 102 combined yards. Trevor Etienne with 19 carries for 79 yards. He had a long 17-yard run. But again, Georgia just really couldn't ever get anything going. Finally scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter. So it took them a little too long, but hey, look, a win's a win, and you live to fight another day. You get a week off, and then you go to Tuscaloosa.
And then if you're Kentucky, that's 2 straight games in your home building. You did not score a touchdown.
Yeah. Brock Vandegrift, 14 of 27 for 114 yards. Kentucky did run for 170 total, though, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's solid.
But they lost.
I'm telling you, the thing with Georgia is this knock doesn't apply to a lot of teams because a lot of teams don't have the short passing game that Georgia does. Carson Beck is really good in a short passing game, and he manages the game really well in every game he's ever played in, minus the SEC championship game last year when he inexplicably fumbled a football. That ultimately was the turning point of that game and kept them out of the playoff. But they have a downfield passing problem. They don't stretch defenses, and you got to be able to make safeties stretch out a little bit. You got to be able to present a threat of beating somebody deep, beating a good team deep down the field. Anybody can throw bombs if you're in the SEC against Tennessee Tech. Anybody can do it against whoever it was they played in the first game. Or Clemson, yeah, whoever it was they played in the first game. Just kidding, you can't. But they did a really good job of that in the second half once they established a couple of quarters of dominating in the short game. But over the long haul, man, you got to be able to continuously stretch teams out, and really, there's not a receiver on their team that I trust to consistently do that.
I think they'll be exploring those particular options again while they're off this week, and then get ready for Bama next week. But I would agree with you. And again, maybe get Delp a little more involved than they have so far this year. The other conference game was A&M at Florida, which we talked about how big it was for both teams. In the end, Florida just looked, again, it was 33-20. It really wasn't that close. Florida scored late to make it to the 20 points. They actually scored all their points in the second half. It was 20-0 at halftime, and the swamp was about half full by the time the third quarter rolled around. It was also a rainy day in Gainesville. As of now, Billy Napier still has his job. There were a lot of people. There was apparently a board meeting called yesterday, I guess a teleconference. But what the board at the University of Florida discussed, they probably wanted to know buyout parameters and, like, can we just go ahead and do it? Apparently Billy would be owed close to $25 million.
They're having the preliminary discussions, if you will.
Yeah, at least something. They go to Mississippi State this weekend.
And you better win that game.
Well, Mississippi State was beaten pretty handily by Toledo. Florida is currently a 5.5-point road favorite. Take that as you will, but it does look like Billy Napier has the job for at least another week.
It looks sad.
Yeah. Bama all over Wisconsin in Madison, 42-10. Texas saw Quinn Ewers get hurt. Arch Manning came in, threw 4 touchdown passes, accounted for another one in a 56-7 win over UTSA. I actually saw today that at least at FanDuel, I believe it was, Arch Manning's Heisman odds are now better than Quinn Ewers. 16-1 for Arch, 18-1 for Quinn.
They're just stealing money from people.
Quinn will be back.
Stealing money from people.
In a couple of weeks. Mississippi goes to Wake Forest, wins 40-6. Missouri just gets by Boston College 27-21. Oklahoma beat Tulane 34-19. And Arkansas beat UAB 37-27. Vandy, the magic ran out.
Oh, in the most disgusting way possible.
Georgia State. Listen, it was 22-14, the score in the fourth quarter alone, but Georgia State held on for a 36-32 win in Atlanta. There you go.
Vanderbilt has finally become Vanderbilt once again. It was fun for 2 weeks.
You knew it was a matter of time.
It was fun while it lasted, fellas.
You can see all the scores again, a couple other blowouts in there and some non-con games, but those are the particulars. Let's get back on the phone lines, hearing from you, talking Carolina LSU, line 9 there, please. David is up next. David, thanks for the patience, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, good, y'all. How are y'all?
All right, man.
So I'm going to take a different approach, like I told Elijah. As far as the quarterbacking play, I was glad to see Robbie Ashford kind of throw it, and that dime he threw in the basket was just absolutely great. But I guess my question, or kind of the thing that I thought of was, back in the day when we had Connor Shaw, Dylan Thompson, Steven Garcia, it was like when one of those guys got down, you had a reliable backup to go in and could run the offense, could move the ball downfield. Was that just a pipe dream? Did Carolina get lucky, or in today's college football, because of NIL and everything else, it's kind of hard, that magic's kind of hard to come by now? I'll hang up and listen, guys.
Ooh, yeah, that's a fair question. I think a lot of it, to be perfectly honest with you, is that you had one of the great quarterback coaches and teachers of all time recruiting you. Even if Steve wasn't out there on the road all the time getting it done, these guys wanted to come play for Steve Spurrier.
Helps.
And GA is a hell of a quarterbacks coach. So that there was that. Look, Ashford's a guy who's played at Auburn and Oregon. I think they wanted him to throw the football a few more times than he did the other day. He, chose to tuck and run on a couple of plays that broke down, and he and Lenoris are used to that. Again, he had to alter the game plan to some degree for what Robbie does. While Robbie is technically a dual threat quarterback, if you will, that is in the mold of what Lenoris wants to do, I think it became pretty obvious pretty quickly why Lenoris won the job. And Lenoris has come into his own, better through the air in the last couple of games than he showed against Old Dominion. Still a long way to go for Lenoris, but it is getting better. And as you mentioned earlier too, Elijah, the rapport with the receivers is coming around. In terms of the NIL part of it, David, listen, man, that's an area where South Carolina needs to improve. Again, you're not going to be Georgia or Ohio State or A&M or Texas in some of these things. But the Tennessee collective is killing it. And the Ole Miss collective is killing it. And I'm not here to say that, that's the difference right now. Again, Carolina played well enough to win the other day, and they are getting better. But, there are things you can do to secure those last few guys, that I would label, the more good players. You've got more good players this season, and I think you're seeing the evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more to be done. So but I would say, going back again, And Shane was here when those guys were being recruited. Heck, he probably had a hand in it. But, yeah, when you've got Steve Spurrier and G.A. Mangus coaching you, yeah, you're going to want to come play for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an inexact science now, transfer portal, quarterback shopping as well. I mean, we've seen a lot of the failures of it in real time right now. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei is the greatest example. You can get him at Oregon State, figure out a way to use him. And of course, that's a quarterback that's had a lot of tape, right? Then he goes to Florida State, and you could say he's the reason you lost that Memphis game and that you've really underachieved. When it comes to acquisition at that position through the portal, it's very much so an inexact science. Yeah,
Memphis did beat Florida State, if y'all missed that.
Yeah, Florida State off to a great start.
Boy, that's rough. That's rough. All right, our guy John is ready to give us his thoughts, and we'll hear from him on the other side. Not supposed to make me laugh when I'm getting ready to do one of these things. Welcome back in. We're going to tell you about my good
big
friends
hearts around here
at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. No better place than Palmetto Citizens to finance your next vehicle. They offer the same low rates on all new to 21 models. Got some great options for older vehicles as well. Many of them come with no payments for up to 90 days. So you can get nice and situated, and they can finance over 100% of the retailer purchase price on new to 21 models. Plus, Palmetto Citizens offers additional coverage and insurance options dealerships cannot beat. My wife and I are members. We love working with the folks at Palmetto Citizens. It has been a fantastic opportunity for us the last couple of years. So go shop for that new vehicle, then check with Palmetto Citizens before you finance anywhere else and see how much you can save. Learn more right now when you visit palmettocitizens.org. Welcome back in. It's the Postgame Show's final few minutes. Brews Day tomorrow, plus Shane Beamer speaks at 1. Might he have any more insights on what the folks in Birmingham say about some of the officiating questions, concerns?
My guess is no.
I would think so, too, but hey, that's why we tune in.
That's right.
But Ryan will be here tomorrow, and we'll have more of what Shane has to say. Some players will be speaking tomorrow as well. Carolina opened as a 27-point favorite over Akron.
Zips.
And then an off week next week before Ole Miss comes to town.
That will be a pretty big ordeal. Yeah, I think they're still scoring points right now. I don't think they've actually stopped. The game is over, but I don't think that stopped them from scoring points.
Let's see what John has to say about this one. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about his favorite professional team, but we'll find out.
Yeah, what happened to them?
Well, I guess God just really wanted me to have a rough weekend, fellas. I guess that's the best thing I could come up with.
Yeah, sometimes life throws those things at you.
The thing that hurts worst about this one, to me, Jay, is that it was LSU. And we've only beaten them twice. And the last time we beat them was 30 years ago. Grant, we've only played them now only 8 times since then. But that's been one of the kind of, I think, since we've beaten them, we've beaten everybody else in the SEC except for LSU. And having them down 17-0, you feel pretty good about your chances then. And the thing is, of course, you hate a great ball game like that being marred by controversy. I saw what I saw on the replay because I didn't see it when it happened. Kennard hit him in the shoulder pad. And credit Nussmeier. He went to the Dennis Rodman School of Selling a flop and got the call he needed. And, you know, that's unfortunately, it's not because he was wearing the LSU uniform. It was because he's the quarterback. And I saw on a tweet earlier in the weekend, or later in the weekend, I should say, just put a red jersey on him already if we're going to overly protect them like that. Right. Because at that point, he was running toward the play, and Kennard had every right to block him. I know what you guys have said. Where he blocked him is where it was questionable, but if it had been the running back, nobody would have said anything.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. We said that, too, that the quarterback in this sport, high school, college, pro, they're going to get extra protection. Like it or not, that's the reality.
Unfortunate as it may be. And, you know, the only thing you can do is, you know, Lou Holtz had an old saying, don't let the loss last week beat you this week. Will Muschamp would certainly let the loss last week derail the entire season. I don't think Shane is going to do that, you know, from what I've seen in the years that he's been here. Going forward, as far as the next couple of weeks go, if Sellers is good to go, let him go. But I would like to see Robbie Ashford get in there more against Akron, provided Carolina does what we should do against them. And then, you know, the old saying goes, what Cam Smith said a couple of years ago, you know, when Ole Miss comes to town, drop your nuts, get ready to go. Let's lace them up and go out there and kick you know what.
Well, that's what they got to go do, John, and thank you as always. Again, y'all, we've talked about it a lot, and there is controversy. I agree with what Shane has said publicly more than anything else. Don't put yourself in a position to be judged that way. I know that's not what some of you want to hear. Again, the only thing today, and anybody that's complained about the officiating that I did not agree with, we had a caller about midway through the show that was adamant that if it were Alabama or somebody else, that wouldn't have happened. And I think, well, again, you know, if when LSU plays Alabama, then what happens? I do not believe that level of subjectivity extends downwards so that one team can beat another. They vet these men too well, and I just do not believe that. If you believe that, hey, okay. I'm not that guy. Again, don't put yourself in a position to be judged that way. And John's not wrong. Nussmeier did act like he got shot.
Mm-hmm. Would have used a different example than Dennis Rodman. I don't think Dennis Rodman was much of a flopper.
Well,
he kind of played pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But now listen, that's part of sports.
Yeah, that is.
That you again, gamesmanship, whatever. you find ways. Nussmeier's a pretty savvy kid, not just in terms of, as we said, downfield vision and threading needles. That was a pretty smart thing to do there, to go down. Like I said, 3 people threw their flag on that play. There were 3 flags thrown. That's just hard to say. But
sometimes the appearance of penalties is more than the substance of penalties.
Yeah, especially
the way you're looking at it. I mean,
especially when, again, you're giving people quite literally a second or two to make the decision. I didn't like it, but I get it. But listen, Carolina made some big plays, y'all. They made some very athletic plays. This is not a moral victory kind of a thing that I've said today, too, but there's a lot to build upon, and you did earn more people's respect.
Certainly.
So build on that and see where it takes you while also cutting down on the stuff you can control. See you tomorrow.